So excited to interview today's guest, Adam Rosendahl. He is the founder and chief experience officer for Late Nite Art. And as such, he designs unique learning and development programs across 12 countries for clients such as Pixar, LinkedIn, Sony, and Southwest Airlines. Have a unique story how I got to know Adam and how we connected. I was going through transition, looking for my next fit after losing my job due to COVID, and saw a part-time job ad for his company and was kind of blown away by the description. Went to their website, did my kind of research, and honestly left saying, I'm not sure I'm the right fit for this job, and I'm not sure that this is a good long-term fit, but I'm dying to hear more. And he was kind enough to talk. We decided it wasn't a strong mutual fit, but as you can see, we're still in touch, and I'm really excited for him to share his story. I think they're uniquely positioned to solve a problem in today's workforce. Keep hearing people in my network, especially HR and company leaders, saying, how do we drive connection and solve for truly empathetic relationships between our employees in a fully remote environment, and make sure that they feel that they are part of something bigger and we do care about them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam so we can talk a little bit more about how they do that at Late Nite Art with your team. So Adam, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Late Nite Art brand and let everyone know what you guys do and how it's revolutionary.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. Thanks for having me on the show. So Late Nite Art is a creative learning and development lab. We're based both in the San Francisco Bay Area and now also in Los Angeles, but we work all over the world. And so what we do is we design typically 90-minute programs that kick off company offsites, conferences, and events around the world for teams. And the focus of what we do, we say, is around building psychological safety, creating a learning environment that really promotes more meaningful connections between team members. And we use a creative methodology that's been designed over the last 10 years to do this. So we're kind of weaving in storytelling, visual art, music, and doing it in a very intentional way that helps people take risks, connect with each other in deeper and unique ways, and really just create unforgettable experiences that teams remember for the long term.
Awesome. One follow-up question I have there, you mentioned taking risks. And if I think of like some of the most impactful team building experiences I've participated in or led for teams that I've been responsible for, some of them were those ones where you had to take risks. It's always fun to get to know your team, but when there's fear involved and pushing through that fear as a team, those were the ones that were most impactful for me personally and usually got the best response. So is that intentional on your side, that you're including that kind of risk and that element of potential pushing yourself out of your comfort zone in order to foster those relationships?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think that creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks is the definition of psychological safety. So of course we have to push people a little bit and create that environment where people feel like they can step into a new way of communicating, a new way of talking about themselves, talking, connecting with each other. So for me, we set up our workshops in a way that pushed people not too far outside of their comfort zone, but ask them to step a little bit at the beginning and then incrementally increase the level of risk over time so that by the end they're doing things they never would have expected, and that the whole team is kind of blown away and surprised by how people are showing up and engaging with each other. So I'd say risk taking is a huge element in how we design our experiences.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's so much research out there about that, even starting with our school systems. Our education system is designed really to punish failure and risk-taking. It's get the right answer and you are rewarded, get the wrong answer and you are penalized. And I think that carries over into corporate America, and it's really at a disservice to us all. It's where we're taking risks and pushing that we tend to get really great results. So if you don't make any mistakes and don't take risks, like you might be fine, but you're playing pretty small. You're really not serving the overall goal of the company.
Exactly.
Before I get into the workshops in a little bit more detail, I'd love to hear more. If you could tell us about your why, what was your inspiration for launching Late Nite Art?
Yeah, I mean, when I was 13 years old, my mom sent me up to a leadership camp on Whidbey Island, Washington, and I was really lucky to experience extremely good facilitation, where there was about 80 people, both teenagers and adults, and they use different art forms to help us connect with ourselves and to connect with each other across a really, really diverse audience. And at the end of that 8 days, that first camp experience that I went to, I think my paradigm was shifted around what deep relationships actually looks like. I recognized that the relationships I had with my friends, with my family, with everyone in my life could be so much more. And so I think it set me on this trajectory, one of wanting just to cultivate deeper relationships across the board in my life, but then two, also wanting to be a facilitator and use the arts to help people connect with each other and with themselves. And so I was part of that program for, forever, for 24 years, actually. And that really helped was the building block for me to create experiences in my own life that had those same elements and eventually lead to all the ingredients that built Late Nite Art as a business. But it really started off as a community project. So I was hosting events throughout for many, many years that were really bringing people together using the arts, music, meaningful conversations, kind of giving people prompts and dialogue and guiding them through this process where they would draw the answers to questions on these long banquet tables. And I was playing music as a backdrop and I was facilitating the whole experience. So leading people step by step through this program. And eventually, after doing this for a number of years, started getting invited into really unusual events. Like the first actual event that we were invited into before Late Nite Art was officially a business was a conference around diversity and inclusion. And we were asked to use our process, our arts-based process, to help about 50 diversity and inclusion officers from around the country talk about race and identity in a creative and more playful way. So accessing this somewhat difficult conversation that usually feels very heavy and can be very serious, and try to translate that into a really creative format. And at the end of that, it just led to a lot of beautiful relationships between that group of people. There's a huge amount of vulnerable sharing. And I recognized right from the end of that conference that what we did was a powerful tool and we could use it in so many different ways and platforms. So that was sort of the beginning of the journey. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, like what I'm hearing is it's just you eventually found a way to make a business out of the way you lived your life, starting at 13 and kind of taking that into developing meaningful relationships and then offering workshops and then eventually saying, hey, I can make money out of this and help serve others with this. It's made such a difference in my own life. So I think those stories are so beautiful and magical when everything comes together in that way. And especially, you're right, we're kind of at a point in our society where I believe we're more connected than ever. We just refuse to admit it. If we would have those conversations, we find that we do have more in common and people's hearts are the same and most of us want to solve these problems. It's just become so difficult to talk about them at risk of potentially offending somebody, saying the wrong thing, appearing uneducated. So giving a vehicle for people to have those in-depth conversations and realize that I'm a big believer in the goodness of human beings, that there's a lot of good in there and that people do want to solve it. I think it's really beautiful what you guys are doing. Throughout COVID especially, I've been remote since 2004 and have led a variety of teams and fully remote employee for most of my career. And throughout COVID especially was contacted by quite a few people asking about how to solve for it. If they'd never been in remote environments, employees were missing connection and engagement and all the budget that they had around team building experiences, company conferences, looking to repurpose that, but really solve for the engagement. So tell us a little bit about how you are uniquely positioned to solve for that problem of engaging team experiences in a virtual environment.
Yeah, so we started leading Late Nite Art virtually at the beginning of 2020. And I just went all in terms of skilling myself up around virtual facilitation and how can we translate these deep in-person experiences to an online environment. Initially, I wasn't sure what was possible, but pretty quickly I realized that there is a lot of magic that is possible in a virtual environment. And with the breakout room function, I think getting people to start to share stories from their life and uncover the layers of themselves that they don't usually talk about in a group setting, and setting up the space for that with music and all of these things, it allowed for really, really powerful growth and learning to happen even in these online environments. So I started teaching for an organization called the Scaling Intimacy School of Experience Design. And what we do is in that, just learned everything I could about bringing connection to the online environment, and have throughout COVID been leading workshops to help organizations and individuals become much better at bringing connection and creative tools into their virtual meetings, conferences, and workshops and events. And so with Late Nite Art, it feels like an essential need right now. Every single client and company that we are working with has the experience of team members feeling isolated, feeling a lack of motivation, and I think just the whole connection that has brought so many people together in a team environment. It's really tricky to figure out how to do that online. So I think that doing a really intentional and memorable experience for a group of people is essential, just to bring people back into the same page and make them feel like part of a team again.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and couldn't be more correct. I mean, the amount of burnout and the great resignation that's all over. Nobody wants to work. I mean, when I've asked questions, and I've always been a big questioner. If something doesn't make sense to me, I like to hear it directly from the source. So I've asked a lot of people, why are you leaving? Why are you not staying at your job? And overwhelmingly, their responses related to things going on in their personal life, plus the stress of living through a global pandemic, but finding out that they have to homeschool their children or become a caretaker for an elderly relative that they didn't feel safe leaving in an assisted living facility with COVID outbreaks, and all of those things coming together on top of just trying to go kind of rise and grind every day without that connection, doing it in a virtual environment, is just taking a toll on people, on their hearts and souls. So I think starting with empathy and bringing that connection back in reminds people, the average person, I know a lot who really genuinely enjoy their job and like their company and would want to stay there. However, they're just saying, I can't do it. I can't deal with the stress. I'd rather be happy. I'll make drastic changes to my lifestyle. And I think that there's an opportunity to solve for all of it, to let them calm that stress, feel connected, and keep their job that affords their lifestyle and the life that they've built for themselves and their family. Before we move on, I would love to hear a little bit about what are a few accomplishments that you are most grateful for along your journey with the Late Nite Art brand?
Yeah. So let's see. The thing, just to speak on what you just mentioned around people feeling like, what would it be like if they're able to hold all of the things and still maintain their job? I think because there is so much grief and so many emotions that are running high right now, because of the times that we're in, and there isn't a really good space to express and release those feelings, I do think that that is part of the reason that people feel like it's not compatible for them to continue working as they have been. They need a big, significant change. And so I do think that it's really important to bring more opportunities for people to express what's going on in their lives in a work setting, so that they can just let that go and then work again, because without releasing it, expressing it, I don't think that people can actually continue to collaborate in a healthy way. So I do think that that's been a big part of our work, is actually creating spaces for people to express some of the frustration, stress, anger, grief, sadness, joy, gratitude, excitement, and be able just to speak that in a team setting, and then after that, feeling lighter and more connected, and just like they actually know what's going on in each other's lives, which helps them work so much better as a team. So, yeah. But in terms of, let's see, accomplishments, you said. So, I mean, for me, I'd say like the biggest accomplishment that I often feel, where I feel really proud, is when I am able to create environments where people feel, where I just see people opening up from their heart. And so often I work with a lot of teams who are scientists or who are engineers or executives, and people are operating from the head. They're moving very, very quickly. And there isn't often a lot of space that's designated for vulnerable sharing, for slowing down, for really sharing from a more raw place. And so when I see that happen, that shift from people operating from talking about their accomplishments or just kind of like go, 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 and they're able to drop it down and then share from a really vulnerable place in front of their team, and I see the resonance and how people respond to that. Whenever that happens, that's where I feel like my work, I've done what I'm here to do. And I just see the impact of that is profound, just in terms of how people soften and treat each other so differently, and also just develop a lot more empathy for their leaders on their team or for the people who are in different roles. who previously didn't really quite understand each other as well. So that's the overall, I think, like accomplishment that I often feel that happens whenever I lead workshops. But for me also, a big accomplishment has been moving from just me as a facilitator leading Late Nite Art to building a team of facilitators globally that are all people who I'm extremely inspired by. So I think the facilitators that I've brought onto my team are all people who are sort of superheroes in their own right and in their own field. They all have a different set of skills. And so a big accomplishment for me has been cultivating a team of basically, superstar facilitators and being able to work with people who I admire, who I feel like could be mentors to me, and getting to create that environment where we can learn from each other.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's the dream with anybody, any leader, is to have a team of absolute rock stars that inspires you. You know, the five closest people to you kind of define a lot about you. So if you can surround yourself with the best, it's a huge testament, and hats off to you. Fantastic. Yeah, and just before moving on, it sounds like you have a real talent for guiding. You know, you're calling it facilitating, but I often use the word guiding because I think that what I'm hearing is people are more connected when they're able to be authentic, and an authentic person has a variety of emotions. Like I do feel like for a while it went so off kilter in corporate America to just show up and be work, be about the job, be the job, and just have that kind of corporate America. And not to say it wasn't a part of your personality, the way that you show up at work, but it was just so not as a whole person. And I think everything that we've been faced as a society is calling on us to say, I can only connect and relate to somebody who is authentic. I need to know that other people have problems and struggles and feelings the way that I do, or I feel alone. And Absolutely. It's hard to work with somebody and feel connected if you feel alone. So I think it's really beautiful that you're bringing kind of those emotions to the forefront and just letting people say, hey, it's okay. Like, we all have a lot going on. We aren't just a job. We are entire people and whole people.
I was just at a 3-day leadership conference for a group of 140 scientists who are Nobel laureates and triple PhDs. And there has been a culture, I think, of people touting their successes and their research and their projects that they've accomplished, but definitely not of opening up the messier sides of themselves. And so one of the things we did to end the conference was actually having people share about a failure from their life that where things didn't go as expected, and doing it without the silver lining. So just to be able to share that story of a failure. So people talking about projects that were terminated, or the lack of a promotion, or getting kicked out of a situation, or not meeting expectations or goals, and being able to just hold the space for people to share that. And then the partners of the people who are sharing the story were then describing some of the qualities and the strengths that they saw in that person. So seeing them as resilient, as humble, as a great listener. And in that, I think it was just a practice of helping people recognize that when we share the failures or the messier parts of ourselves, it allows for so much more connection than when we share the successes. It really, really does. And so it's really hard to do. And I think sometimes it's tricky to create an environment where people feel comfortable to do that. And so I do think, though, that was a really powerful experience, just to see how the impact of that.
Yeah, it sounds super powerful. I mean, failure is our greatest teacher, in my opinion. It doesn't always feel great at the time, but if you're willing to step back and kind of observe and say, what did I learn from this? It didn't go the way I wanted. What are the lessons? How do I prevent them? And I think it's really beautiful what you shared about the other people's perspective, is that we've all gone through failure. So none of us have an expectation of perfection in anyone other than sometimes ourselves. We have this unrealistic expectation of, I can't have failures, but total allowance for anybody else to have space to be human and fail and learn and grow and do better. So I think it's beautiful that you're kind of solving for that in a really empathetic way.
Yeah, and it's tricky. And like a lot of our clients come to us saying, like, our team is all incredibly skilled at what they do, but they're not willing to take any risks, because there's an environment of, if you mess up, you kind of get dinged, or there's so there's how do we create environments where people feel a little bit more flexible to mess around, experiment, take risks. And so that, I think, it just takes practice. It's like a muscle that you have to strengthen. It's just around creating I think in a lot of what we do is creating these learning environments where people can do things and have it not be perfect. and just practice that skill of taking risks, kind of falling or doing things not very, doing it a little messy, and then being witnessed in that and recognizing that's okay.
All right, fantastic. And what do you wish more people understood about the late night art offering? Do you have any common misconceptions?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so since our business, it was named about 11 years ago, the business is totally different now. So it doesn't happen late at night. It's not really about art. We do events at all times of day, and we use different creative modalities, like I mentioned, creative writing, storytelling, visual art, as a really strategic tool to help people deepen relationships. So we're creating these workshops around leadership development, around onboarding new employees, around building trust with a new executive team. And so, yeah, there's a common misperception that we're kind of like an art team building workshop, where I would call us more of a, like I said, a learning and development lab, where we can design workshops using our methodology, but for a variety of different pain points that our clients have.
Okay, so like experiential arts versus maybe what people think of as the arts, the common things that come up to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist, and I really, really love bringing arts into untraditional environments, like an executive offsite, where there's like a lot of high level strategy going on, and then how can I actually use visual art to help people envision what they want for 2021, for instance. So I love bringing that in, and especially music has been a huge part of what we do. It's kind of using music to create these more playful, creative environments where people feel excited to be in them, and then there's still a lot of deep learning that's happening. So really going against this idea that learning has to be boring, dry, or lacking in play.
Yeah. The more fun you have, the more money you make. That's one of my favorite sayings. The more fun you have, the more money you make. Keep it fun, and people will keep working hard. Do you have a favorite participant or experience story or two that you could share with our audience?
Sure. Let's see. I mean, one that is really stuck with me is I worked with, it was about 20 executives from a really large multinational company. And so each of the executives represented a different region of the world. So one was Australia, one was in Southeast Asia. And so they all had very big roles. And you can imagine black suits, like very stiff, kind of, I guess, compartmentalized way of interacting with each other. And there was a moment where I led them through an activity where they were writing a question about something that keeps them up at night. And so each person was writing a question down on the table. And one of the men in the room wrote down, will he get married? And so I had them stand up, and as if they were each other's board of advisors, go around and start answering all the different questions. And so people were writing on this guy's question, yes, no, may it be so. And eventually they came back, they were reading their responses, and then I had people share a little bit about what those questions were, like what was the story behind the question. And this guy stood up and he shared this. When he said, will he get married? He was talking about his son, who's 11 years old and has Down syndrome, and his daughter is getting married. And so his younger son is continuing to ask, am I going to get married? And so him and his wife, every night they've been just talking about, like, do you think that he will? And so he was expressing this story really vulnerably in front of this group of executives. And you could tell the room was just dropping as they were really, really with the power of his story and just able to see him more, understand him more. And then one guy stood up in the audience and he said, listen, I want to apologize because I wrote no. And I, of course, had no idea what the context was. And I just want to wish that your son, from the bottom of my heart, I just hope that he does like find that joy and love and does get married in his life. And then, the guy who wrote the question started to cry, and then they had this like moment where they hugged, and it was just a very unusual moment, I think, with this particular group of people that would never have happened before. And I just saw the impact of something like this is the relationships that were built and the way that they see each other, because there's so much potential with this group of people and how they collaborate. I think just having a moment like that can also, it's hard to actually say exactly what all the ripples were, but you can tell that it had a huge impact on the relationships that were built in that room that day.
Yeah, I'm so touched by that story. It's truly emotional for me. That's beautiful. And just for somebody to take the time and say, no, I've changed my mind, and want to put good energy towards that goal and say, hey, like I'm taking off this no. Let's put good energy towards him and wish this into his experience in life. It's really beautiful that you can bring that into corporate America. And I loved your question about what keeps you up at night. I think in a lot of entrepreneur groups that I participate in and networking, that's kind of the common joke. Like, what kept you up this night? What kept you up last night? I think any business leader, any entrepreneur has gone through that journey of just constantly being kept up at night. So it's a beautiful thing that you're giving people an opportunity to talk about what those questions are and get some different perspectives on it. Because sometimes that, we only block ourselves. So it seems really muddled in your own brain. But sharing those stories with others, you'll get perspective that you may have never gotten otherwise.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. So many of the entrepreneurs are up at night for one reason or the other.
one or another. So with that said, who can benefit most from incorporating late night art team building experiences into their practices, and maybe share a little bit about some expected outcomes or feedback that you've received from groups who've hosted these learning and development opportunities previously?
Yeah, so we weave our workshops into a lot of offsites that team do, whether it's marketing team, executive team offsite, or entire company offsites. We're also involved in a lot of company conferences that are happening internally, and then also external facing conferences. So we worked for a massive biotech company maybe 6 years ago during their training and development team offsite. There's about 140 people there, and we led it was like a 100-minute workshop to close out this 3-day conference that they did, or offsite that they did. And I think that 6 years later, our client, I was talking to her the other day, and she said, I remember every moment of that workshop because it was so surprising. The way that we have kind of, I guess, built the design of the workshop keeps people on the edge of their seat. So, and intentionally, people don't know exactly what's going to happen next, so they can't space out, and they can't really, they have to remain extremely present. And so she says she remembers a lot of the details that her partner shared with her in these one-on-one interactions where people are talking about stories of failure. They were talking about the thing that keeps them up at night, or their number one growth area that they want to work on as a leader. And so part of the impact of that workshop was just building a unforgettable experience in the life of this team, helping her connect with a number of her team members in a way that she never would have expected before. And really just improving the overall sense of, I guess, cohesion that everyone had, and in a certain way, loyalty that they had to this group of people, where everybody can be siloed and working on their own projects. It provided this really memorable experience in the life cycle. And it just is, I think it brought everyone together in that kind of, that way that people, just really changed how the team operated.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, to recall in detail years later everything that had been shared, that's truly impactful. I mean, how many conversations do we have that we recall in vivid detail years later after the fact, let alone conversations in passing with colleagues? Not that they don't mean a lot to us, but we just don't always have the opportunity to have really meaningful, impactful conversations that you would want to recall 5, 10 years later.
absolutely. Yeah. And oftentimes it's when we create these experiences that brings a whole group to a point of collective laughter, where an entire team of 140 people is all laughing at the same moment, you can really feel that whole group just dropping one level of depth. And so as that happens again and again, and then by the end of the session, the group feels more connected than they ever have been. It's sort of paving a path that they can come back to. So even if we're not coming back again and again, I think that it's creating the opportunity for that team also to come back to that level of collective laughter and to a sense of levity and lightheartedness, or depth and connection and vulnerability. So we're setting the stage for that to happen more frequently.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned even if we don't come back, but I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. So if you don't have the number off the top of your head, just roughly percentage and exaggerate, just estimate. But how frequently do you do repeat experiences with your clients? How often do they ask you to come back and facilitate another experience for them?
I would say about 25% of our clients are repeat clients. Yeah.
Okay, well, kudos to you. That's fantastic. Strong retention.
Yeah.
Um,
And right now our biggest clients are LinkedIn, Genentech, Verizon, and Kaiser Permanente. So these are clients that throughout 2020 and 2021 we've been working with over and over again with a variety of different teams inside of their companies. And for us, yeah, getting to build relationships with people over time, of course, is really helpful in helping shift the overall culture.
Yeah, and some of the companies you mentioned are really known as spearheading a positive corporate culture. You know, I have several friends who worked for LinkedIn and have toured their facility in Chicago when I was living there, and they really prioritize that corporate culture and the connectedness across their employees. So kudos to you for being kind of one of the go-to people that helps them realize that mission. Um, where do you see Late Night heading throughout the next year or so? Any goals that you're ready to kind of share and make public at this point?
Yeah. So, I mean, where we're heading, we are building like I mentioned, a team of really extraordinary facilitators within Late Nite Art. And so there's more and more opportunities where these facilitators are going off to do workshops in a variety of different settings. We are, for instance, we're having a lot more opportunities to work in Latin America. So I haven't confirmed it, but looking for a Spanish speaking facilitator that could be our main facilitator who's doing work in Latin America. And so expanding to different regions around the world is really exciting because a big part of what we do does feel it totally translates to different cultures. So I just led a series of workshops in Mexico. I had a Spanish translator and was just so delighted to see the laughter, the connection, all the different interactions that were happening with, it was a group of MBA students. And it just warmed my heart just seeing how the process that we've created is so easily translated to different cultures. We've done it in Vietnam and India, in London and Australia. And yeah, so that's a big part of the expansion of Late Nite Art is leading workshops in different parts of the world. Another big thing that we're doing is just weaving, I guess, embedding ourselves more inside of one company and doing a series of workshops and experiences that creates a learning journey over a period of time. So we're selling these sort of bundled, longer term engagements with clients. And that's a big part of what we talk about is around creating culture, shifting culture, helping teams build more of like positive culture inside of their company. And so, of course, we can do that over a period of time. We have a lot more things that we can work with. So that's a big part of our expansion. And then the final thing is we just have started leading a train the trainer program. And so we just did our first one inside of LinkedIn. And we are going to be offering that in other companies as well, where we're basically helping our clients do what we do and basically become facilitators inside of their own teams to lead not necessarily just Late Nite Art, but just weaving a lot of the methodology that we've created into small ways in their meetings and be able to facilitate their own offsites instead of hiring us to come do that as well. So.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And I just wanted to reiterate because I think that there really is a strong appetite to change corporate culture and to solve for the things, the conversation is ripe. It's all over LinkedIn. It's in a lot of different circles. However, oftentimes, and not to say anything bad, it starts with the consultant, what changes are needed. But it sounds like you guys are solving for the how, not the what. So it starts with, okay, well, what do we need to do and why? And then it goes into the how. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of companies get stuck is how do we change our culture? I don't have the skill sets. I don't know what to do. And what you just kind of walked me through with this long-term embedded process of a series of learning and development opportunities that drive that connection and empathetic relationships, it sounds like you're really solving for the how of driving a new and different culture and radical change. So that's super exciting to me because I think, again, it kind of falls back to where we started, which is you're solving a very unique problem, that there's appetite for this, but how do we go about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think especially another realm that we play in is around building a creative mindset or an innovative mindset. And I think that people who are not tapped into their own creativity, they can't create a team culture in which the team is willing to take risks and be more in that creative space as well. So I think that for us, working with our clients in this train the trainer program and helping them tap into their creativity and be in a space where they can be a bit more vulnerable and they can use different art forms to help their team with brainstorming exercises and things. It's a really powerful tool, and I've just seen it change the relationship between leaders and their teams all over the place.
Fantastic. And outside of the connection, the relationships, the culture of this piece, have you had any feedback on more of a financial impact of the programs that you do for any of the clients that you work with? Has there been a shift in revenue or goal hitting? Is there anything from a financial end? I think that really speaks to, especially the leaders at the end of the day, if you're responsible for P&L, you have to look at the numbers. Is there anything you can share with us around that?
Yeah, so typically, like I said, we do a lot of executive retreats, and so our workshop is often the way that helps build the glue between this group of executives before they quote unquote get to work and do this strategy. And so we're kind of building the culture and setting the framework, and then they are off and running. I don't have the stats exactly of how our workshop has improved revenue for different teams that we work with. I just know that our clients consistently tell us that the workshop that we've done has been like a powerful moment in the life of their team that they've never forgotten. And it's kind of become a North Star for them around what's possible when their team is in a more just connected, cohesive, and playful, vulnerable place. And so I think it acts as a metaphor for a lot of teams around what's possible when they look at collaboration and how people can be, if they're in a more, I guess, humanized way where people are really, really seeing all the layers of each other and not just trying to squeeze the productivity out of each person. So I think what we do, it is a little bit tricky to track the metrics, and we don't have the surveys set up yet to do that. So that's part of our next step as well.
Yeah, but I think, I appreciate you answering it. And I think even without the numbers, as a leader and a team leader, I hear this moment has become a shining star, a North Star to what the potential of this team is and collaboration. That really says it all, because I believe everybody's a genius in their own way. And it's just that we live in a society that's so conditioned to everybody be cookie cutter. And if you're in this role, only be good at these things and be the best at them, that you're not allowing everybody to bring in their unique skills and strengths. So just kind of ripping that down, I would hypothesize that if you continue to enforce the learnings that you took from that experience, you would have no way but to go up in terms of revenue and results when you're incorporating all the different skills and gifts that people bring to the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So since the Corporate Counterculture podcast is centered around people and brands making a revolutionary difference, I love to ask a fun question, which is, what does it mean to you to be revolutionary?
Let's see, revolutionary. I mean, one of the things that comes up right now for me is we live in a culture where primarily people are either consuming or criticizing what's happening around them. So there's very few people who are actually creating. I do think that there's probably more people who are creating than ever before in a certain sense, but there's also just a lot of people who are commenting on the things that are happening. And so I think that right now, anyone who's creating anything, whether it's a podcast or writing a poem or creating a piece of art, creating an event, and is contributing as opposed to criticizing, I think that in a certain way that feels like, I don't know if it's revolutionary, but it feels like it's a powerful act in the world that we're in right now. So I'm a big advocate for people to be creators and to take action and to make things in the world, as opposed to just trying to tear down the things around them or just nitpick the things that are already been created. So that's one thing I often think about. And to be revolutionary, I think another thing that comes to mind is what it's like for me or for anyone else to truly follow the voices that are guiding me towards the things that I really care about or that I want to create, without letting the sometimes overwhelming voices of criticism like drag me down. So what it means to be in a certain way, it's a pure direction, momentum forward towards the things that I really love or care about, instead of, I guess, succumbing to like the societal noise. So I think like being revolutionary in that way is following that unique call that that like drives us forward.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned like really kind of listening to your own internal compass and letting that guide you and just drowning out the noise, which brings up a funny follow up question, which is with people who are revolutionary and driving change and really staying true to their own internal compass tends to come what I call the haters. Tend to get a few of them. However, they typically are your biggest fans if you look at it that way. But I'd love to know from you, have you ever received an insult that you actually took as a compliment along this journey?
I think that, I mean, the work that we do is pretty provocative. We're getting people to take risks and do things that they don't usually do. So we have occasionally been in spaces where we've been part of a team. We've been leading a workshop for a group of people that has perhaps you could call it a toxic culture. And so what we're doing is asking people to be more vulnerable, open with one another. And we're working in a place occasionally where that's actually really not safe for them to do so. So we're pushing people. And so in that case, sometimes people might give like really poor feedback reviews. And so sometimes when I see that, and I actually look a little closer, I realize that they don't like to be uncomfortable. So when we push people into a space where they're being uncomfortable, sometimes they recognize this is a really good learning on opportunity. And other times people, especially executives, can be really, really like, this is a time to take a cell phone break, or this is like really not something I want to lean into. So I've just learned to sometimes take feedback with a grain of salt. And also, especially when they said they didn't have a necessarily good experience, to dig a little deeper and actually learn what was going on for that specific person. Because oftentimes what's happening is they were asked to do something that they felt a little bit uncomfortable doing. And so it brought up an opportunity for learning for them, whether they took it or not. So yeah, I think the other thing though, that a long time ago, we banned alcohol entirely from our gatherings. People used to have a little bit of wine before the workshops that we did. And it just, I think a couple times led to people acting in front of their team in a way that just felt inappropriate and not necessarily like productive for the work that we're doing, which is really about helping people connect with one another. So
That guy came out.
that guy came out. Yeah.
It happens. Yeah, I mean, just based on what you said, like I again just want to make a call to executives who are hearing this. And especially, you said executives being like, okay, let's take a cell phone break and being afraid for their teams to be uncomfortable. I kind of have a philosophical issue with that. I think every business leader or every unit leader has, what I refer to, and somebody along my journey, mentor, called me BHAG, so big, hairy, audacious goals to hit as a company. And how are you going to hit big, hairy, audacious goals if everybody's comfortable all the time? That requires you to get outside of your comfort zone. So what better way to do it than in a very safe, structured environment with a trained guide who's saying this is a safe and progressive way to do it. You're surrounded by love and empathy. We can take breaks as needed. We'll kind of watch the energy in the room. But again, just kind of want to reiterate my call to executives who are hearing this. Teams should be uncomfortable. That's where you get to the good stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's just tricky around how do you create an uncomfortable environment where people still feel safe enough to actually stay in it.
Right.
Instead of, like I said, like leaving for a cell phone break, or, I think for me personally, it's a different thing entirely. If I'm being guided or facilitated by somebody who I don't trust, and then I feel uncomfortable for that reason, that's very different, because I certainly won't open up in that environment, versus if I know I'm being pushed into an area, like for instance, just having really candid conversations and giving constructive feedback in a really honest way. That's an area for me that is like, ooh, this is a little edgy. So I think that I need to be guided through that in a little bit of a safe container. All
right, fantastic. Well, Adam, is there anything I haven't asked you today that you wish I had?
I think part of I guess our special ingredient is the fact that we use the arts and that we also really emphasize good facilitation and experience design. So I think, like I mentioned, from a very young age, when I was 13, I experienced people who are using different art forms to help participants connect really deeply with themselves and one another. And so a big part of our process and what I believe in is that the arts are not necessarily just for aesthetic value or used to get people to become good at painting, drawing, writing, dancing. I really believe that the arts are a super powerful tool that we can all use to help people connect with one another and with themselves, and just as a vehicle for creating learning environments. So I don't see it happening very often that we bring different art forms into the business environment. And so I'd say that's something that I just always encourage people to experiment with a little bit around, like, what would it be like actually if they brought um, music and a writing exercise into their next company meeting, if they were just playing music and getting people to free write on a question around, even what would be your greatest dream for this next 2 hours, and get people to write for 3 minutes to music and have that be as a way to start the meeting, instead of just using talk, listen as and slides as the typical format. So I'm always just asking people to mix it up a little bit, because I think we're all, especially with the amount of online meetings that we're part of, looking for fresh new ways that we can engage.
Yeah, I love that. And sharing a little bit about my personal journey. Anybody who knows me well, and I know we've only had a few interactions, knows I'm quite the open book. But a lot of my journey behind the Conscious Culture Fairy that is hosting this podcast, and the brand centered on conscious collaboration, is my own healing journey. And I entered the healthcare revolution after almost dying 4 times in my 40 years and 65 surgeries and procedures. And your point about arts being healing, it's been such a huge part, creativity and arts. So not only have I had many surgeries and months in hospitals and months to years in bed recovering, but also I am a CPTSD sufferer and was diagnosed this past fall with PTSD, and I've had it most of my life, but did not know that. And so it's interesting to me along that journey, I couldn't always explain to people why I would always say movement and arts is my life. Like, they'd be like, what do you do in your free time? What are your hobbies? And I was like, I don't know, they're hobbies. I just do yoga, Pilates. I go stand by the bay and dance. I listen to music constantly. I was like, it's my life. I journal, I do artwork. And I realized that, like, that internal voice that guides us, even when you don't necessarily know why your soul's suffering, it knew what the answer was. And it was creativity and art and human connection. And then having this all come together throughout the last, 6 months to a year of my life, and realizing how it fit together and how incredibly healing, and kind of the fortitude that it takes to keep going when you don't know why you're struggling and suffering in life. I'm really passionate about bringing these tools to others, because I think a lot of us can relate, or in, maybe you haven't had 65 surgeries and procedures, that's a little bit rare, but we've all had such huge struggles in life, and the worst thing anybody's experienced is the worst thing imaginable. There's no comparing or ranking any of our human experiences. And the arts are something that really touch people on a soul level and allow you to heal from some of those sufferings. So again, I'm so thankful to you, Adam, for joining today. Really excited about the Late Nite Art team, and I'd love to give you the opportunity to tell everybody where to find you, the best way to reach out for more information, because I'm sure that they'll want to know more.
Sure. Yeah. And thank you so much, Nikki, for sharing part of your journey. It's powerful just to hear that arts has been part of your healing process. And I really see the arts as, that's why I'm attracted to it as well, as healing, whether it's just around healing our connection with ourselves, with other people. When we talk about team connection, a lot of it I do think is, and I could put it under this umbrella also of healing, as well as development, growth, learning. So Late Nite Art, Nite is Nite. So the best way to learn more about us is go to our website, lateniteart.com. Again, Nite is Nite. And yeah, we have a number of different ways that we engage. We used to do a lot more community and public events. I think we're going to start doing that again. And we also host industry leader events. So right now, the next one that we're going to do is specifically for product marketing leaders. And so we bring the people who are the best in the industry together, and we host these kind of community networking groups. We've done it for culture, for people development, and so that's just another way that we're kind of hosting workshops outside of the realm of just working with clients. But the best way to learn about us is website, and then I think the newsletter on the bottom of the page.
All right, fantastic. Well, Adam, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today, and very excited to get the message out about the great works that you guys are doing.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for having us on board.